All right, Jim Belushi is here. I can't believe this never happened before. I've had a podcast for like 13 years. I don't know where you've been.
I have been hiding out, man, up on the farm in Oregon there along the Rogue River, fly fishing and growing cannabis.
Yeah, you're up to stuff. What? Tell me about your new show. It's coming out in a couple days, right?
Yeah, it's called Growing Belushi on Discovery. It's going to be at 10 o'clock Wednesday night. It is a reality show based on me and my farm and all these people that I have working for me, and we're growing pot, legal, recreational, medical marijuana. And my cousin and I, we literally fill up our Ford Explorer filled with pot, drive to dispensaries, sell the pot, get cash, go to the bank. I mean, it's an unreal situation, but it's really fun and a very good piece.
How does a kid from Chicago end up in Oregon on a 90-acre farm growing pot?
Well, I have a buddy that lives down the river. His kids and my kids are the same age, and he lived in LA also. And we became very friendly. And he said, "Why don't you come up, to my ranch?" And so we used to go up there twice a year in the spring and the fall. And I dove into the river one time naked, and I came out, and it was like a baptism. And it was like, I got to look for a place around here. So I found this old Elks picnic grounds.
Yeah.
The Elks,
right?
They sat at that picnic grounds for years, had these huge parties, and they all got old. They never enrolled anybody younger, and then they were just ready to sell it, and I bought it.
Were you always a pot guy, or was it later in life? Because some people are late bloomers with marijuana.
Well, I was definitely in high school. I mean, I was going to rock festivals, Stevens Point, Kickapoo Creek, Wadena. I was, a bit of a, psychedelic guy too. A bit of a hippie,
Yeah.
I was just right off of it. Like my brother John was at the Democratic convention, right? He came home with tear gas burns. And the next day there was a picture. There was a picture on the cover of the Sun-Times of two Jeeps with barbed wire on it, pushing, young students, people, long hair, hippies, up against the fence. And he goes, "Let's see, you see right there?"
Yeah.
I said, "Yeah." He goes, "That's where I was." And I went, "But John, that's outside the frame." Yeah, I was right there. He was a bullshitter, that guy, man. He wasn't in that goddamn shot. Yeah, that was me. I said, "I don't even see your hand, John." No, but I was right there. So anyway, I was during that generation. And so I smoked a little bit. I actually got busted for a couple joints here and there. And then, once I started really acting and college and then a professional, I really didn't smoke much at all, if any. And then it just kind of came back around with this legalization and all the different kinds of strains they have. They do different things. They fix different things. I mean, there's a strain I have that my buddy who's paralyzed from the chest down is a blues musician, a great singer, Johnny Wheels.
Yeah.
And a harmonica player. His legs spasm and he has no idea. So he likes this chocolate hashberry I have because he'll take a few hits in the morning and all those nerves relax. So there's veterans that I've met with extreme PTSD that certain strains allow them to talk to their family, their children, and sleep. So there's some beautiful medical things that happen with cannabis that, just changed my life. Actually, that gentleman was the one. I mean, I ran into him at a dispensary visit, and he looked at me as I was shaking hands. And I said, "Are you all right?" And he said, I was a veteran. I'm a veteran. I was a medic in Iraq for too long, and I saw things happen to the human body that no one should witness. And he said, "I have triple PTSD, they tell me. And I won't take the pills." but I can't talk to my wife or children. I can't sleep. And your Black Diamond OG is the only thing that allows that to happen.
Wow.
And then he teared up and he hugged me. And I said, hey, man, I didn't make this stuff. And he said, no, but you're the steward.
Yeah.
And that was the point that it really changed for me personally. And it's become much more of a mission of healing, advocacy. Like, I'm part of this Last Prisoners Project, which is, we're trying to get out all the prisoners that have been for years and decades for minor possession, ruin their lives, collapse their families. It's legal. We're making money on it. And there's guys still in prison for being caught with 3 pounds of weed, So I advocate too. I'm very medical, but it's also joyful. It's fun.
Have you
people feel
followed?
good.
Have you followed how cannabis is playing out in professional sports, especially with football and basketball?
I think the last thing was that they're not going to test for it anymore in National Football, right?
Yeah, but it took a while to get there, and there were guys who were doing it every day.
I was friends with Steve McMichael during the Super Bowl years in Chicago.
Yeah,
and he was a tackle. They're taking a banging, man. His neck, he had pains, and for him, the cannabis helped him.
Yeah,
but then he would have to go off for 90 days before summer in order to clean out, for 60 days, 30 days. And it really is a benefit to these athletes. And I'm really glad the NFL is starting to wake up.
Yeah, and NBA, within 4 or 5 years, I bet it'll be completely legal. But if for some reason there was a real stigma with it, I think the NBA especially, I think, was really concerned about, they had a whole drug history dating back to the 80s, and they're so concerned about it. But now it seems like it's swinging around.
Yeah, it's just different. It's I don't consider it a drug. I mean, when my brother was, when he passed, when he died, he was doing drugs.
Right.
And marijuana was considered a drug. So when you're doing marijuana, it's like marijuana. It's Schedule 1. Marijuana is on the same schedule as cocaine and LSD. And your own mindset was that. But it's medicine. There's research going on that's incredible. What's going on in Israel, what they're doing, combining the CBD, CBDN, and G, and creating different medicines to do certain things. It's a long way off, but they are really moving in that direction. But I think that if my brother John was a pothead, he'd be alive today.
Right.
Now, he was a middle linebacker.
Was a legendary athlete. You could see it in the sketches.
Yeah. 5'8", he said, but we know it was 5'7", middle linebacker. Okay. He had the most tackles in high school. He had the record. I used to love going to the games and hearing Belushi on the tackle.
Right.
Belushi on the tackle. I was so proud, and he was the captain. And back then it was like, what's the matter, Belushi? You got your bell rung? Get back in there. They were getting concussions right and left, especially him. He was an aggressive bull.
Yeah.
There was one time in my kitchen, in the back, there was a little laundry room with the cement sinks, those little sinks. And I went into the kitchen and told him to turn down the little TV, I wouldn't do it. Like, you got to do it. It's your TV, one of those things. And I went in there and he was on the sink and he shook and he fell to the ground. And I thought, come on, John, stop it. Just turn the TV down. And then I got scared and I called my mom, would call the police, pulled his tongue out. He went to a full seizure. And they did spinal taps, they did x-rays, they couldn't find anything. But now, I really believe he had CTE.
Oh, interesting.
And I believe that when he started smoking marijuana in college, that it was medicine. And then it just went on to other things. But that's why I think if he was a pothead, he'd be alive today. And I think these athletes suffer so greatly for our entertainment. And anything we can give them then is safe. It's safe.
You know, I think about that era a lot from 77 to like 86. Like basically Len Bias was, I think, the real turning point with drugs. But you think back, there's like a 9-year stretch there, especially with cocaine, where you have all these celebrities, all these comics, all these athletes in different sports. And for years and years, it's like there's no awareness at all. Nobody understands really how bad the stuff is. I think until your brother was the first one. And then when Richard Pryor set himself on fire, those were the first two where people were like, wait, holy shit, what's going on here? Like, do you remember in the moment, like kind of when things turned like that?
Hey, man, I remember, 79, 80 being in Hollywood and just everybody and their brother and the production coordinator and the PAs. And it was just everybody had a gram with them. It was just the social thing. It was the cultural thing, And I always said, John was kind of led that. He reflected it.
Yeah,
he did it on the show with the donuts, the white donut on his face, and when he died, it woke a lot of people up. Right. It changed things. I'll tell you one thing: no one's offered me cocaine since 1982.
Right,
thanks, John. But it did change it. It did.
Well, it was
a fun thing, And so then the TV show, we actually go to Colombia. I did a crazy thing, man. I took James Orr, my cousin Chris, hired a camera crew, 9 days in Colombia, didn't know what we were going to shoot, and just improvised for 9 days. And it's 2 episodes in this series. And we did a whole thing on Pablo and how John and Pablo kind of became famous at the same time. And he was international, John was international. They kind of looked alike, and he was dealing cocaine and John was doing it. And what was this fascination I had with Pablo? And it was like, the difference is that John never killed anybody. He might have killed you with a laugh. He might have peed a little bit in your pants. But so anyway, we do a lot of exploration in the show about Pablo, Colombia. Colombia it looks very good in it because it's a very beautiful country and people are beautiful, and they were terrorized by this man. And there's hundreds of thousands of people that have been affected by the 100,000 deaths of Pablo, 100,000 families that he collapsed.
Right.
And not only in Colombia, but all the way to my family. So anyway, there's a section in there about that in the show. It's a very good show because there's nobody getting high in it. It's not like a stoner show.
Yeah.
But it's about the farm. It's about growing. It's about growing. It's called Growing Belushi. So I grow as a person. Plants grow. The business grows. It's very cool. It's very cool.
So you're in Chicago in the 70s, and the comedy scene's taken off there. And your brother ahead of you is in the legendary comedy troupe, which name I'm blanking. What was the comedy troupe?
Second City.
Yeah, Second City. And there's all this great stuff happening, and yet at the same time, the sports scene is an abomination. You have the Bulls, it's pre-Jordan. You have the Bears, it's a whole decade before the 85 Bears, and you have just Walter Payton by himself. You have the Cubs are just in a wasteland, and the White Sox are owned by Bill Veeck, and the highlight is Disco Demolition Night.
Yeah.
What was it like to be a Chicago sports fan in the 70s?
You're making me want to smoke a joint right now. You're upsetting me so much. You're giving me PTSD shakes.
Because now it's super happy. Everybody's won since then.
That was a terrible time. I stopped watching the Bears. John would call me on Sunday to make me watch, and we'd watch together on the phone. And long pauses of just watching, It was terrible. It was a terrible time. It was a terrible, terrible time.
What was the whole
We used to do a sketch.
Yeah.
Okay. Me and another guy are in the bleachers, right? And we're going, your mother this, your mother that, and you're screaming, you suck, you stink. What are we going to do? This pitching stinks, blah, 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 blah. And over the announcement goes, now pitching for the Chicago Cubs, ticket number 1044. That's me.
Yeah.
Pitching was so bad, they're pulling people. It's the pitch. It was
my God.
bad.
Yeah, and then the 85 Bears happen. Jordan shows up. And everything leads to this Cubs. Were you a Cubs guy or a White Sox guy?
Cubs.
Okay. So then everything leads to the Cubs, which they have to win on a Game 7 the same week Trump gets elected, and they have to blow it in the ninth inning, but then there has to be a fortuitous thunderstorm that resets the momentum, and then they win in extra innings. I still can't believe it happened.
If you turned in that script to be produced, they would go, no, not gonna. It's not real.
They would cross off the thunderstorm. They'd be like, "This is too over the top.
No.
Just winning in the ninth inning. The thunderstorm's ridiculous."
By the way, they cross out because night shots ring.
Right.
No. Right. They wouldn't have believed it.
How did your life change? How did your life change getting a World Series out of the way?
Well, I'll tell you when my life really changed is when I was in New Orleans and the Bears won.
Oh, against my Patriots.
That was really the moment.
Wasn't close.
It was so beautiful, and it was an out-of-body, numbing kind of feeling. I remember standing outside with my girlfriend at the time, and I was like, this is it. This is it. Life is going to be different now.
Well, you had a big movie coming out that year, too.
That
was like your breakout movie.
That was the year I moved to Los Angeles. That was the year About Last Night opened, Salvador opened. That was the year my career took off and I became a multimillionaire. And I still have been waiting for the Bears to win another Super Bowl for another kind of reinvention.
Were you thinking of your brother when they won? Because he would have gone nuts, right?
I couldn't call him on the phone. Like, hey.
What would have happened to him in New Orleans on the night the Bears won the Super Bowl?
What?
Your brother
John?
being in New Orleans.
Oh, I have no idea. I can't even fathom it.
The city would have closed down. We were
Butkus fans.
Oh.
Well, John was a middle linebacker,
Yeah.
So, Butkus was always to this day. I mean, there's Gale Sayers and Sweetness, but Butkus was our bloodline, he was the man.
I had Rob Lowe on the podcast last month, and we
I know Robert Wood.
Yeah. We were going through. I basically was like, we're just staying in the '80s because I'm a child of the '80s, and I'm like, we're just going through every '80s movie, and you tell a story about each one. And then we got to About Last Night, and we both agreed, like, first of all, kind of paves the way for 40 years of rom-coms, right? It's a romantic comedy that has the relationship fall apart, get back together. It's got the crazy best friend for the guy and the crazy best friend for the girl. All of these recipes are in place that then when Harry Met Sally happens, and then all of a sudden rom-coms are in. But About Last Night was like basically the first one, right?
Wow. I love hearing that.
How about that?
Yeah. Although there is one little scene in there for a little note there where Rob is wearing a T-shirt and said "No lights in Wrigley Field," because that was the year also.
Yeah.
Putting those night lights up. But yeah, that's true. I never looked at it that way. But yeah, it was good because it was edgy, it was funny, it was real.
Well, it's based on the famous play too.
Based on it, the play was "Sexual Perversity in Chicago" by David Mamet. And it was a 60-minute play.
Yeah.
And Tim Kazarinsky and Denise DeClue wrote the screenplay, and that was an hour 50 minutes. So they contributed quite a bit. But most of my stuff in that movie came right out of the play, my dialogue.
Yeah.
Out of Mamet's mouth.
I remember when you showed up on SNL, because SNL was my show from as soon as I was old enough to watch it, and that's how your brother, because they used to show on NBC, they used to show the greatest hit shows at like 10 o'clock. And that was in like 78, 79. And I'm like, who are these guys? And then just immediately all of the guys became idols. But then by the time you showed up, and it was basically Eddie's show, and you kind of overlapped with that a little bit, right? You were on the same. Was that the year that he taped all his stuff ahead of time and then was out halfway through?
Yeah, the first scene I did was the Gumby scene, and it was a pre-tape. He would pre-tape like 10 scenes in a day so he could do Trading Places.
Right.
Which I also did Trading Places.
Right.
Yeah. It was Eddie and Joe Piscopo were really the kind of running it. They kind of kept that show alive during the Gene Domanion years. It almost died, that show.
Right.
And then the next year they left. And
that was the all-star cast the year after.
Yeah.
Marty Short, Chris Gett. That season was excellent.
Well,
you got to play the chess coach.
Dick Ebersol was a very smart man.
Yeah.
And he went out and bought the Yankees. He went out and bought some stars. It wasn't like guys coming right from the Midwest, second city, and, growing. He bought pros. Billy Crystal, Christopher Guest, Marty was a pro at that point. Harry Shearer had been around since the early days, so he was smart. He did a good job, Dick.
Well, especially when Eddie left, because you have that first 10 years, I think Chevy Chase, then your brother and Aykroyd together, and then Eddie were like the 3 times people just almost became too famous for the show. It was their opportunities and the amount of money you could make in LA. It just you couldn't compare it after a while.
Yeah,
and Eddie was definitely
basketball in high school and jumping ship and going right to the NBA.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
John did 4 years, and I remember going, "Where you go? Where you go? What are you doing, man? What are you doing? You can't quit." And he said, "Jimmy, it's like high school,
right?
Freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year, and you got to go." Okay.
Well,
that's what he did.
I mean, the thing now with him, and I don't know if we'll ever see this again, is somebody who has the #1 movie, they're on the #1 TV show, and they have the #1 music album at the same time. There's no way that will happen again. I don't see a scenario where that can happen. I think it's like impossible.
Prince, he didn't have a TV show, but he had
it was be like if Prince was also on SNL.
Yeah. It was a magical time. It was good to be the little brother. I was really having a good time. It was beautiful.
Well, and then Eddie he's on SNL, but then he has the #1 movie in the country twice. And that was also impressive. But I think, as the show evolved.
Yeah, but he had a comedy album too, Raw, I think, that was
true. Well. It was it was Delirious. Yeah. Yeah, so maybe he came close to that too. I thought you didn't love being on the show though, right? You kind of like some pieces and not like other pieces?
Oh, I wasn't mature enough for the pressure. It was, it was wild pressure. I'm a guy who wears my emotions on his sleeve. I'm not really that smart. Dick Ebersol just saved me. I was having a hard time. You do something live and that's it. I mean, where you are in that moment and that day is where you're going to be forever. And there's a lot of pressure. I would say it was the hardest thing I've ever done.
Really?
Even divorce was easier than SNL. But then I got a little out of hand, I got to say. And Dick Ebersol fired me. And I basically begged for my job back. And he had a sit down with me. He straightened my ass out. And I had the best semester. I was there 2 years, like John, freshman, sophomore year, second semester, got it. And then we didn't do any more than that. I mean, some of those guys have done the show for 8 years, 10 years, 15 years. It takes a while to learn the rhythm, the pace, the style. It takes a while. And I was just getting it. But I owe a lot to Dick Ebersol. He was tough with me, and he was great.
Well, you had additional pressure because you were at that point, you're Belushi's little brother, and now you're on the show, and that's probably the only time
Well,
a
that never
situation like
bothered
that's
me
happened.
because it was something I lived with. I mean,
Yeah.
it was funny because at Second City, Brian Doe Murray was on stage with my brother John.
Yeah.
And I used to go see the show all the time. And there was a little place called Willoughby's in Piper's Alley that they used to go and have beers afterwards. And there's Billy Murray. And Billy was in a touring company. They only had one touring company back then. It was small. And I looked at Billy and I was like, how do you do it, man? How can you be here when your older brother is on the resident stage? And he goes, just do it. And he gave me the freedom.
Yeah.
Permission. And so I went to Second City. And then John even said, why would you want to do Saturday Night Live? We captured the hearts of America. No one's going to be able to capture the hearts of America. I said, John, because you guys created a linkage from Second City, the stage, to television. It's every improvisational actor wants to be in that show. I said, I know you're my brother, but I'm an actor. So to me, it didn't bother me.
Yeah.
Because I've been compared and I'm cool with it,
do you remember watching the first episode in 1975? Yes. And like, did you know right away this was going to change comedy?
No, I didn't know. Got a sense of it pretty quickly when, on campus, everything shut down at 10:30 at night in Illinois. And there were houses filled with 14, 15 people around a TV watching the show.
Right.
It was an event.
There's been a couple really good SNL books, and it's really crazy how famous that show was when you think about like now, right? Like 30 million people on a Saturday night. You think like now that's basically the Super Bowl and that's it for a TV audience. Cause it's so splintered. We have hundreds of channels, we have streaming, we have the internet. But back then it was like, even that first year, they became overnight superstars and nobody knew who the fuck they were a week before the show went on the air. I don't think there's ever been anything like that.
Yeah. Well, they were right there, man. They were leading the generation, the baby boomer generation. They were leading the resentment and the angst that generation had from the 60s. I mean, John was always leading that because when he did Second City, it was the first time they actually did social comedy opposed to political comedy. He was imitating hippies and fathers of hippies and Mayor Daley. And then he did Lemmings, which was a great satire on Woodstock, their generation. And then Lemmings, and then the Lampoon Show, and then Lampoon Radio Hour, then Saturday Night Live. I mean, he was always mirroring what was going on in him and that generation. And so when people watched it, it was like, plus they had the skill of how to deliver a joke.
Right. Well, you think like that whole comedy generation comes out of all the shit that happened in the 60s and the Vietnam War, right? And this really painful time for America. And I wonder in 2020, I wonder if this next decade that's coming, will something similar happen with comedy coming out of all the pain we're in now?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I hope so.
Absolutely. How can you not comment on what we're feeling right now? What's going on in the world? What's showing up around us? That's where the good comedy comes from. I mean, there's great comedy that's silly and goofy and fun too, but the edgier stuff.
Can I tell you what I think your biggest mistake in your career was?
I've made so many now. Let me look at my list here.
No.
I have all of them. All of my mistakes right here. Let's see.
Here it is.
First
Ready?
marriage, no. Second
no, you're
marriage,
gonna like
no.
this. You're gonna like this. I think the principal, I think you could have done like 5. I think the principal 5 could have happened. I just think the principal could have been your actions. I don't know why you gave that one up.
You could have done it up. They didn't.
You could have done 15 years of those.
I know. I could have ran that. I could have ran K9. I could have.
That could have been your death wish. You could have been the Bronson of the principal. You just keep taking over new high schools. And so
I'm here to clean up this high school.
For the people listening, Mr. Belushi made a movie called The Principal in 1987, which is a classic. And it's like, you're a principal. This school is out of control. It's being run by bad people, drug dealers, and you just go to war with them.
Yeah.
And there's
with
crazy
my baseball bat.
Yeah, and you have a baseball bat. And it was like, this is a great idea. Make more of these. Yeah. I don't know. It was basically like Walking Tall, right?
I'd go into straight in a remote high school. There's nobody there. I got to do it all through the internet.
Yeah, the pandemic. You're just on Zoom threatening people.
Stay in school.
Because I think they made another one, but I think Tom Berenger was the principal.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Yeah, fuck that guy. It should have been you. They should have done like 6 of them.
Actor, man. Did you see him in Platoon?
No, he's a great actor, but you were the principal. Nobody else could be the principal.
He was the substitute.
Oh, was he the substitute?
I think it was substitute.
No, I think you're right. But they basically ripped off the principal.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it was Blackboard Jungle. I mean, we all rip off everything.
When did you realize I'll just do these TV series, these sitcoms, and this is a great life, and I have a steady day every day? And because you were in on that pretty early in the 90s. You figured it out.
No, the sitcom was 2001.
2001, whatever.
Yeah, we opened on October 5th, right after 9/11. It was a time that people wanted family again, and a family sitcom kind of was a rebirth. And that was a great gig, man. That was 8 years of 30 minutes from my house, seeing my kids be raised and eating dinner with them and taking them to school and bringing them to the set. Larry Joe Campbell and Kimberly Williams and Courtney, they were like brothers and sisters. It was love. It was fun.
Everybody who's ever had a sitcom job makes it seem like it's like the greatest thing ever.
It is. It's the greatest gig ever.
Because really you get to have a normal life. TV. Yeah. You get to have a normal life.
You can have a lot. I mean, I remember talking to John Goodman a long time ago. He goes, Jim, we got it down to a 3-day week. Right. And then I was like, wow, because I worked my ass off for 5 days to get that script in order and ready and work on new gags. But after about 3 years, we could have we actually did do a 3-day week, but Larry Joe Campbell and I, we liked the work. So we'd come in on Monday and Tuesday anyway and work on gags, physical gags, and help with the writers. But yeah. And the last season, I think Courtney came in on Friday.
Wow.
Before taping.
That's the life. When did you and Aykroyd become close?
After John died, I mean, I've always known Danny, but after John died, Danny and John Candy, they were really the only guys that came up to me and looked me deep into my heart and said, how are you, Jim?
Yeah.
Are you all right? You need anything?
Yeah.
And they put me to tears, and they just kind of put their arm around me. I mean, my first show on Saturday Night Live, the pressure of John and all that. The host was John Candy.
Oh,
and he came into the set, and he came to the offices, and he said, we said hi and all that. He's like, I'm on a diet, Jimmy. I'm on a diet. It's not a diet. It's a lifestyle change. He would order fettuccine for lunch. Is that part of the lifestyle? You can always have a little complex carbs, Jim. Anyway, I said, well, he said to me, what do you want to do? And I said, John, you're the host. It's more about what you want to do. We want to know what you want to do, what characters you want to do. He goes, no, this is your first show, Jimmy. What do you want to do? I was like, well, I like to do, all these different characters that he does. And we sat in a room for 2 days with 2 other writers, and we wrote. I was in 6 pieces.
Wow.
With Johnny. Here he was across from me. And the most frightening night. And there was my brother, Johnny Candy, And Danny's the same way. He was like, I'm talking about 25 years ago. Danny said, you ought to do the Blues Brothers. Come on, do the Blues Brothers with me, Jimmy. I was like, I can't, Danny. Come on, that was John's. No, you don't play Jake Blues. You play Brother Zirashida, Brother Z Blues. Yes, you'll be the lost brother we found in the deep mountains of Albania, and you don't speak, you're mute, but you can sing and dance like nobody's business. I said, Danny, I can't do it. Doesn't it feel weird for me to take over? And he said, no. He said, it's like a law firm.
Yeah.
When a partner goes down, the son takes over, the brother takes over. He goes, this is a character. These characters are created to live forever. And I said, if you don't feel weird about it, Danny, then I don't. And that was the start. And he just cracked open my chest, pulled my heart out with that music.
Yeah.
And that joy. And I've had that. We're like brothers now. It's a brotherhood, It's just been a beautiful experience. And in this TV show, we do the Blues Brothers. There's a whole storyline with Danny in it and Judy. Pretty cool.
When they were touring and stuff in the late 70s, did you go to any of those?
I went to the Universal Amphitheater one.
Yeah, they were playing like big venues, right? And
with
like
Steve
the best
Martin.
blues people in the world.
Steve Martin, it was Steve Martin's show, and he asked for them.
Yeah.
He really gave them the break. Danny always gives them credit.
Well, that's considered the greatest show in SNL history. The Blues Brothers, and then the Steve Martin and the King. I think the King Tut sketch was in that. Like, I think that's considered the apex.
Well, the Universal Amphitheater show was Blues Brothers open and Steve Martin.
Right.
And I mean, everybody in Hollywood was there. They had 3 nights there. I was sitting next to Joe Cocker. Okay.
Who
that's
Belushi, who your brother used to do the famous impression of.
Right. So when they came out and they did the first 2 songs, Joe Cocker turned to me and said, oh, so they're playing it for real. And I talked to Stephen Stills about it. I said, that's what he said, don't you understand? Your brother, Saturday Night Live, Lemmings, they all made fun of us. And we're always like, hey, man, don't cock block us making a living. Leave us alone. We're just doing our music,
Yeah.
So when they saw the song choices, the musicians, and the commitment, they were like, oh, so you get it. And then they embraced them into the musical world.
I always thought that was one of the smart things with them, where they decided to do it, which is at that point, what comedian is trying to cross over to music? And then your brother, by sheer force of will, just convinces some of the best blues musicians in the world to be in the band.
You're right about sure will, man, because I went with him while he was trying to get Fagan from
who was a major dude.
Man, we went to his studio. It was me, it was John, it was Judy, Danny, Paul Schaefer. And we went to a studio that was in his building, his townhouse up on the east side, west side. And I watched John pull his little gypsy act, and charming and working it, working it like he was trying to get, And, the guy ended up turning it down. But Paul Schaefer sent him off. Go get Duck Dunn. Go get Steve Cropper. If anybody can do it, John, it's you. John would just
go and do it. Well, that was one of the best. I mean, I've read all the SNL books because it's my generation. Where they had Gilda Radner had her Broadway show at the same time as they're going on tour. And Paul Schaefer is also in the Gilda thing. And then it becomes a tug of war who gets Paul Schaefer, and he ends up doing the Gilda thing. And John is so mad. He's like, he's out of the movie. He flips out, turns into this big territory thing with him and Lorne Michaels. It was like a real thing.
He was out of the movie. It was Mark.
Yeah. And it actually,
Murphy
you watch the
Dunn.
movie now, and Paul Schaefer, he would have been better as I forget who they picked, but it would have been fun to have early Paul Schaefer. Yeah, early Paul Schaefer in that movie would have been fun. But in that movie, he's just convincing all these different guys to be in the band. It's like real life, basically. But
yeah, it was basically based on a real life. Yeah.
what is the Blues Brothers from a business thing? Because that turned into a whole bunch of different things, right? Like,
well, it's one of the major through lines of the series, Growing Belushi. It's about me and Danny and Judy and me proving to them that I deserve the Blues Brothers IP to brand cannabis. Because to me, what the Blues Brothers symbolizes is, great music, mischievousness, and a mission from God.
right.
And I think cannabis has all three of that. The fun, the joy around it, the music. I mean, Live Nation, Michael Rapino is one of the great men in my life, and Danny's. Michael Rapino, on an 8-minute pitch, shook my hand and gave us a couple $1 million to shoot this show. So he's a beautiful man. But, the mission from God is also the medicine and the healing power. So the brand itself sits on cannabis very well. So that's one of the business things that we're doing.
Well, it's interesting. 40th anniversary of that movie in June, which I couldn't believe because.
Well, we were going to do a whole thing in Chicago, and
Oh yeah. What were you going to do? Like a big outdoor concert or something?
We were going to do the Blues Fest. We're going to do the House of Blues. We were going to drive the car up to the Music Box Theater and show the screening, me and Danny. We're going to do a little motorcycle ride with the cops. We were going to celebrate 40 years of a brand of music, of joy. There's nothing but joy. I mean, it's the House of Blues. Help ever, hurt never.
Here's my last question.
Yes.
You realize that you were Captain Kangaroo in the Jackie Rogers Jr. Jackpot Wad sketch, which is the greatest sketch in the history of the show. And you ruined Captain Kangaroo. He was never the same. I don't know how he came back from that. And it makes me so
Jackie
mad.
Rogers Jr. 100,000 Jackpot Wad.
And Captain Kangaroo really needs the money. It was just an evisceration.
The money.
Yeah. No, he introduces the axe. It was great.
Mary Gross was so perfectly dumb in that scene.
To me, that's the ultimate sketch. Oh, everybody. Christopher Guest played the Chocolate Babies guy. Yeah, it's legendary.
Funniest thing I've ever seen. He
was
the best so good on that show.
You never ran into Captain Kangaroo after that, did you?
No.
Bob Gershon? No. I think his name was. He couldn't have been happy.
What? I didn't make fun of him.
It was good. It was solid. Yeah. Good stuff. Hey, it was great talking to you. Good luck with the show. So it's Wednesdays.
Oh, thank you, man.
10 p.m. Support. Wednesdays, 10 p.m.
10 p.m. Wednesday, August 19th.
Great. Good luck.
It'll be great. Growing Belushi. It's funny. It's like Blues Brothers. It's got music. It's mischievous. And it's got a mission from God. It's got them all three. And we're going to have a ball.
Well, if this works, I think the Principal Six could happen. They could pave the way.
Yes, and we will. We'll do it in a remote educational.
It's a pandemic. They can only hire retired principals, but he's still going to lay down the law in an empty school.
There'll be scenes where your face will come on just like this. Rick, what are you doing in the school right now?
Thank you. This was great. Appreciate it.
Thank you, man. It was a nice journey with you down all those paths. It was joyful. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.